Welcome back. We are continuing on with our series of 0 to 60 in a Microsoft 365. We're going to be looking at Intune and continuing on from our last video, but this time we're going to be looking at endpoint security. So think about how we're going to deploy Defender for Endpoint. What policies do we have for local admin, password solution, lapse, and other things. So with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Defensive insights within a compressed format. So we're back here in our Intune Admin Center, and we're going to go over to our Endpoint Security tab here. So in this environment, it's already set up. It may not be already set up in your environment. And I'm going to just sort of briefly go over what connector settings you need to make in order to establish that connection and get that going. So if we open up a new tab and go to security.microsoft.com, and then once that loads, we scroll all the way down, go to settings, go to endpoints. All you need to do is turn on Microsoft Intune connection here. And what we're doing here is we're saying, hey, we're going to handle all of our endpoint detection rollout of policies in Intune. Then over in Intune, on the endpoint security, you're going to scroll all the way down to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint under setup. You're going to make sure that you have this toggled on, showing up under connection status in the enabled setting. And you've got all these toggles here that you can turn on. The first one is to allow that connection. So we want to turn that on. And then compliance policy evaluations against different operating systems. So do we want to connect Android devices? Sure. Do we want to connect iOS, iPad OS devices? Yep. Windows? Yes. Do we want to enable app sync for sending application inventory over to Defender? Yep. And on and on and on, we have a few more options here. So essentially, if you want to have your devices and your apps that you have in Intune also have that information and enrollment over into Defender in the security portion, then you have to say yes here. And you have the options to go on per specific type of operating system and different control. So your environment may be different, but in this test environment, everything's turned on. So once you see that connection status set to enabled, then you have to do a few things. So you have to roll out some policies. Now you can see here under manage that there's a heap of different categories and each one has different policies. And yes, you can go under each one and create a policy, that's fine. But if you want to do something quickly, Microsoft's provided these baselines, and this is really good. So with the security baseline, you have different policy baselines across different types of environments or different types of systems. So security baseline for Windows 10, but what we're going to focus on is Microsoft Defender. And then continuing on, they also have a baseline for Microsoft Edge, their cloud PC environment, advanced security for HoloLens, standard security for HoloLens, and then your 365 apps. So again, we're focusing on Microsoft Defender. So we're going to click that one. I already have a profile, but we'll go through this process for the demo. Create profile, create, name it. So I'm going to name it something with a lovely emoji. YouTube demo. And then in here, you're going to get a set of configuration settings in which you can apply Microsoft Edge. So all of these are pre-populated, but they're fields that you may want to look over to ensure that you're not enabling something that isn't congruent with the policy in your environment. When you're ready, you press next, apply any scope tags, and then assign it to all devices if possible. Otherwise, use your testing groups to roll that out, or you can have a group of hardened devices versus other devices that may need different policies assigned. Then click Next and Review and Create. Once that's all set up and done, you'll have a Microsoft Defender for Endpoint Security Baseline applied to that group, and that'll start rolling out your EDR in the environment with some default baseline policies, which is great. So going back to our different subsequent areas under Manage, we have options. We have our antivirus, disk encryption, firewall, endpoint privilege management. That does include a separate license. Endpoint detection and response, app control for business, which is in preview, attack surface reduction, account protection, device compliance, and conditional access. Some of these will be familiar to you, conditional access being one of them. But the two that I want to focus on that I think are easy to get over the line and make a big difference is going to be attack surface reduction and account protection. So we'll start with attack surface reduction, something that I really see very little spoken about in the community. And I think that it's something that is really crucial. So in a little bit of backstory, in cybersecurity, you have this mentality of assume breach and then build for that. And attack surface reduction sort of takes on that appeal of assuming a breach, and it's saying, what are we going to put in place to lessen the risk of an attack so the attack surface is reduced? So we're going to say, if something gets through, what are we allowing? And that's a very mature approach towards security, and I love it, and I really do like what Microsoft has done here. So if we go ahead and create a policy, I'm going to show you what to do. You select the platform, we're going to select Windows, and then we have a profile here in which we are going to select attack surface reduction rules. Go create, and then we name it. YouTube demo, if I can type, click next, and we get a whole bunch, an array of options here. And we're going to go through them because I think that they're worthwhile having a look at and knowing, hey, have I got this in my environment or not? So the first thing is block execution of potentially obfuscated scripts. And we have these options here of off, which is the default, block, audit, or warn. Now, in a production environment where this hasn't been set up, you're probably going to set that to audit, and you're going to have an auditing process that will run through for a set time. Then you can review and consider whether you're going to block, warn, or set to off. So in this environment where you can sort of be least privileged, security first mindset, where we are on the front foot and say block. And what this is going to do is think of if you have a script that runs and it's tagged as obfuscated, that's going to be blocked. Now, bear in mind, for people out there that are using RMMs, be tentative around this control because it may involve blocking some RMM scripts that you're running. So just be sure to check that and add any exclusions where needed. Next is blocking Win32 API calls from Office macros. That's assumed to be not a normal thing for Office macros to do. So we can set that to block. Block executable files from running unless they meet a prevalence, age, or trusted list criterion. So this is interesting, and it sort of plays into the app protection, I believe is what it's called. Let me just get that open to show you what I'm talking about. So Microsoft has this preview feature within their security, endpoint security, called app control for business. And within that, it is setting out a policy to say, hey, we're only going to let this run. So a whitelist against these apps, and Microsoft curates a list of known trusted publishers and known trusted applications. And you can add in your trusted ones to have a complete whitelist, so nothing else will run bar that. And this sort of plays on that list from what I can understand, and that is a bit of a educated guess. But the word around prevalence, age, or trusted list criterion makes me think that this is taking the intel from their app control for business. So it's got a list of known good executables, and it's going to look at a few other variables to say whether it's good or not based on the prevalence, age, and their list. So you can have that. Obviously, in an environment, just before we continue, in an environment that has custom dev-made applications, that may be an issue. So keep that in mind. Then block Office communication application from creating child processes. Yep, that's not a normal behavior. Block all Office applications from creating child processes. Yep. And now we're talking about an environment where they're just using Office to write documents or spreadsheets, not using complex formulas, macros, the like. So that may be different in your environment. Block Adobe Reader from creating child processes. Block credential stealing from Windows Local Security Authority subsystem. That one's a pretty obvious one. Block JavaScript or VB script from launching downloaded executable content. Block web shell creation from servers. Block untrusted and unsigned processes that run from the USB. Block persistence through WMI event subscription. Block use of copied or impersonated system tools. Block abuse of exploited vulnerable signed drivers. Block process creations originating from psexec and WMI commands. So bear in mind, if you are using legacy things or connections like psexec, that this is something that gets exploited, and it's worthwhile knowing if that's running in your environment. You may want to audit this first, but it is something that you should move away from if you're using it, unless there is a reason that is warranted on a governance level of the organization, or a allow list for exclusions and risk acceptance. Next is block Office applications from creating executable content. Yep. Block Office applications from injecting code into other processes. Block rebooting machine into safe mode. So this is one that system admins may not like. It'll depend. So in a perfect world, the device is going to be enrolled to Intune, and the system admin is going to have control through Intune to do any sort of diagnostics. In a more realistic world, there may be some devices that fall outside of that, and that's where you may need still break fix ability to boot into safe mode. So this is, your mileage may vary, and bear in mind that what implication it makes when you turn these things on. Next is use advanced protection against ransomware, and block executable content from email client and webmail. Then you have this next area, which is enable controlled folder access. So I like to generally go to audit mode, and you can set up the controlled folder access protected folders. So this one, I'm going to read the description for it. So it says this policy allows adding user-specified folder locations to the controlled folder access feature. These folders will complement the system-defined folders such as My Documents, My Pictures. The list of system folders will be displayed in the user interface and cannot be changed. Value type is string. Use the pipe as the substring separator. So if we go and learn more about this, just to refresh us on what we're actually doing here. So files in these folders that we actually select cannot be modified or deleted by untrusted applications. So that pretty much summarizes it. And setting it as audit will allow us to have the oversight of that. So if this were a folder that had pretty secure documents, say in a legal firm, that might be worthwhile having set up. And you can allow the applications, and you can also have the folder set up here that you're pointing to. Once everything's all good, you click next. You can set up scope tags should you need to, assign it to the relevant group, click next and create. So I'm not going to create it just because I already have a policy in this environment. And you can see here we have the internal baseline attack surface reduction rules already set up. But once you've set that up, that's really good posture to have, because now we're not only have our EDR, our first sort of point of defense when it comes to the endpoint, we also have the next layer where if it gets through that, what are we going to reduce in our attack? What parts are we going to expose, and what parts are we going to say, no, that's just not allowed to run on this system? And now this is just one aspect of removing any possibility for our attack surface to be large, so attack surface reduction. But there's other means too, and one of the other means is around having your local admin accounts defined clearly, as well as having a rotating local admin password solution, so your lapse. And that's going to be under our account protection. So under account protection, I'm going to talk about two different things. We're going to talk about enforcing our local user group membership and our local admin password solution, that lapse, that constantly rotates. Now, the two of these that is probably the easiest to set up is going to be your local user group membership. We'll start with that one. So we click create policy, select our platform, which is Windows, and we're going to select local user group membership and click create. Now what this is doing, just a little bit of backstory with this one, is with a computer, you can have it Intune connected, you can have everything set up and great, but if for some reason there is a escalation of privilege that enforces someone to be added to the local admin group that shouldn't, they're going to then have local admin rights to that computer, irregardless of it being enrolled. But, however, by doing this, we are then pushing to say every time that you get a connection to Intune and want to push back that policy, check what is in the admin group and only assign these users and remove anyone else. So it's a quick way of saying, hey, these are the only ones we're allowing. We're not allowing anyone else, and it just removes and adds, removes, adds, removes, adds. So we'll go ahead and create this one. Of course, always adding an emoji. Create our YouTube demo. Click next. And we're going to click add. Now we're going to select the administrators local group, and you have a few other options here. You can do users, guests, power users, remote desktop users, and remote management users. You can do more than that, but you have to use the CSP version where you are adding in a configuration profile and the URI, I believe that's how you say it, string, and then the integer value under that. So it gets a little bit more convoluted, I might say. But if you're just looking at preset groups, it's pretty easy. Microsoft's got a setting here. So we're going to be looking at administrators, and we want to look at our add replace. So add replace versus add update is going to have a look at the group and say, hey, I'm going to add these users and I'm going to remove everyone else. Whereas add update is going to say, hey, I'm going to add these users irregardless of who's in the group. And then remove is going to remove those users. So we're going to go add replace. We're going to go users and groups, and we're going to select our users. And from here, we can select a few different users. But the one thing I want to make mention here, and this is actually thanks in part to Intune Training's YouTube video on this, they say you must have your administrator TRATOR set up here as a user, otherwise it won't work. Now I'm going to open up my setup that I have already created, my policy. And if we go and edit the configuration, you can see what I have pre-filled here. We have gone for manual. We have administrator, so bear in mind you must have this, otherwise it won't work. And we have these other crazy SIDs. So the SIDs, the SID, the security identifiers, are representing groups and predefined groups that have been created from our Entra side over to the local admin. So what I did is I had a device that was joined. I went and opened up the local users folder under administrators, and I added the SIDs for that freshly joined device into this policy, which is going to add our local admin account as well as the relevant connections to Entra and possibly Intune that are added here too. And these are the only ones that I need access to the administrator group. So one of these groups is tied to our setting back in Entra. And so if we go to Entra, and in Entra there's going to be one area in which we need to make sure that we have selected properly. So if we go to our devices, all devices, and under all devices we go device settings, and we scroll down to here. Registering user is added as a local administrator on the device during the Microsoft Entra join. We want to select our relevant users for local admin. So I have a group here for internal IT system administrators that get added. So that is one area in which we do want to add and make sure that we have selected the relevant users to then be added as local admin. So once you're happy with that policy, you're going to click next and then assign it to the groups that you want this to roll out to. So in this environment, I've applied that to all devices. You may want to apply it to a subsect group. And that now will roll out your local user group membership for administrators. And that's going to go your add remove, where it updates and has a look and goes, yep, all right, remove those users and add these ones. Next is our local admin password solution. So you may be familiar with local admin password. This is the password to give you the ability to log in as your admin locally to the computer, and it is a built-in feature of Windows. And what we're doing here is we're saying we want to manage that through Entra, and we want to have it rolling, so rotating the password so that it is secure. And in the case that we need to log in or use that, we need to know what that password is, and we want Entra to provide it to us. So this is a two-part in enabling this. If we go back to our Entra side, go to all devices, and then we have a look at our device settings, we can see here enable Microsoft Entra local administrator password solution. So we can turn that on, but that's not enough. So we turn that on, we press save. Then we go back to our Intune portal, we go to Endpoint Security, Account Protection, and we go Create Policy, and we're going to be creating our local admin password solution, Windows Lapse. So create policy, choose the platform as Windows, and select Lapse. Then go ahead and create that. Name it something specific to your environment. Use a naming convention where possible. Then we're going to get our configuration settings. So where do we want the backup to be? Well, we want to back it up to Azure only, but in an environment that you maybe have Active Directory, you can have that here as well, but we'll back that up to Azure AD, which is now being called Entra ID. How many days do we want the password before it ages? 30 days is default. Then we can name the administrator account. So we might want to call that Entra ID Labs, say. Then we want to do our password complexity. So we can make it as simple or as hard as we want to. So if we go passphrase long words, that's not going to be fun, but we can do what we want to make it difficult. So if we go the largest amount of length, 10, that's going to do a passphrase with long words with the passphrase length being set to 10. And then we can do the password length, and let's see how many. So this can be as much as 64. And then we can do post authentication actions. So we can set this to reset the password upon expiry of grace period, or reset and password and log off the managed account, reset the password and reboot, reset the password, log off the managed account, terminate any remaining processes, on and on and on. So this is going to be what do we want to do after our authentication actions. So for this one, I'm going to set this up as reset password upon expiry of the grace period, the managed account password be reset. And then the delay, so we can have 24. I believe this is going to be in hours. Yep, 24 hours. And automatic account management enabled. So we want to target account will be automatically managed. And then we have the option of disabling the account or enabling the account. So if we disable it by default, we have another option, which is automatic account management and randomization name. So the name of the target account will not use a random numeric suffix, or will use a random numeric suffix. So we want to create a little bit of randomness here. Entropy is good because then if we are not creating repeatability in our lapse account, it's going to be harder for an attacker to extract the local admin account password, turn it on, enable it, and then log in with it. So that's what we're trying to avoid here. Automatic account management target, manage a new custom administrator account, manage the built-in or not configured. So we're going to say custom because we're creating a custom one, and to obfuscate it a bit more. And last, automatic account management name or prefix. So we could configure that as well. And we can go and add what we need. And then click next, apply the scope tags where needed, assignments, and review and create. And that's then going to push it out to the devices that you have assigned. And once that's set up, you'll know that it's set up by going back to Entra, going to your local admin administrator password recovery under all devices, and it'll show the devices that have this set up, as it'll be saving the password back to Entra. So you can see here my device, and it has the option to show the local administrator password. It also talks about the last password rotation and the next time the password will be rotated. So that concludes looking at our local user group membership for the local admin group and setting up local admin password solution Windows Labs. So that's it. Thank you for staying this long and watching this much of the video. I think it was a bit much to fit into one video, but we've covered our Defender for Endpoint being rolled out, connected to Intune, then rolled out, then a security baseline being created for Defender. Then we've talked about attack surface reduction. So the ability to have rules around if a breach happens, how we're going to reduce our attack surface. Then went further in reducing our attack surface through identity by making sure that our local user group membership for the admin local group is setting a standard for only have these users that we have assigned and update that as needed. And then lastly, also reducing that attack surface against identity by having that local admin password solution set up so that it is not only backing up the password to Entra in the case that we need it, but also rotating that key and having it set up that it's managed so that you're limiting the ability, the ease of the ability to escalate privileges into a local admin account from your devices that are enrolled. So I hope that video was helpful. Please give us any feedback where possible and let me know if this was helpful or any information on what we can cover during these videos. But thanks so much for watching.